Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is the biggest, I think one of the biggest thing of Trump's current administration is going on today with his trip to Russia.
Serious question. What's the % chance that the United States arrests Putin today as a war criminal? Zero. Sean?
Zero. Wait, do you disagree? Yeah. Do you disagree?
Oh, no, I think they're going to arrest him. I think that's the whole thing is to trick him to come into the U.S. and going to arrest him. He's a war criminal.
That he is, but
yeah.
I'm going to cover it with my buddy Michael, who is just restarting his YouTube channel. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, American friends. It's me from. Oh, just kidding. I am not Russian. I am not
Russia. Yeah, this is going to be huge. So, what do you think? Is there anything Trump has done this administration that's bigger than stopping getting Russia and Ukraine to broker peace?
Well, how many wars has he ended in pieces? Pieces has he brokered? Is that proper English?
People argue over if it's 6 or 7, and the Democrats say none.
Right. Well, I personally took note of one particular intervention that he staged just last week between Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Which you're an expert on Armenia.
Well, that particular conflict, it's actually Armenia is in the middle of two hostile nations, hostile to Armenia, Turkey and Azerbaijan. And there was this year, I don't know if it was the EU, but there was an accord that was struck years ago called the Minsk Agreement. Mm-hmm. And that was Russia to protect this region because Russia is directly north of those nations. And so the Minsk Agreement was, we need to make sure these smaller states aren't killing each other and protecting the innocent, blah, blah, blah. Well, this, what Aliyev from Azerbaijan and Pashinyan from Armenia signed was actually kind of world changing. People don't understand what's been going on there almost, for centuries, but particularly the last 20, 30 years. And when Trump brought those two together, that whole European Minsk Agreement was superseded by now America stepping in and Russia kind of getting kicked out. Because Russia was, I'm not a Russia hater, but
I know, but it's significant in that Trump changed an agreement, removed power from Russia, and brought it in our hands as a superior peacemaker. And that's what I mean by that was just last week.
Just last week. And it's like the people in the region have been suffering for decades, centuries, actually. And this was, obviously there's plenty of people arguing either side of it, but this was a significant moment for the United States of America, the greatest Christian nation, to step in to help the first Christian nation, Armenia. It was like, I've had my attention focused on this region for a long time, and now President Trump is focused on it. So I'm pretty positive about what's happening.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, Trump is Democrats treat him like he's a game show host. He's a world-altering ninja
with an alter ego as a game show host, right?
Right, and he's a game show host. So let's get started here with this first one this is him getting on Air Force One. This is the meeting will probably have occurred by the time this aired. But
and there's the president making his way up to the top of the steps there for Air Force One, making a wave to the crowd and entering Air Force One. He has a long flight ahead of him.
This is his travel plan is insane, but this is the biggest change to me, the biggest thing in his administration, not just taking care of America. Here he is posting. Well, here's Tommy Lane. Today, President Trump meets Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. Putin's first non-U.S. visit to U.S. soil since 2007.
Non-UN visit.
Non-UN, I'm sorry. No Ukraine, no EU, just two men deciding the future of the Russia-Ukraine war by tonight. Because he's meeting with the guy, remember when he said of Zelensky, you don't have the cards. Well, now Trump is meeting with the guy who has the cards.
All the cards.
Two men deciding the future of the Russia-Ukraine war by tonight. We should see a ceasefire of the start of something far bigger. What do you think will happen? This is Trump's tweet, high stakes, all caps. Talk about the stakes with me for just a second.
The cards are in Trump's hands now. That's what the tariffs are all about, right? The United States, the largest economy, most dynamic economy in human history. And he, realizing that over the past eight and a half years now, is is wielding the power of that truth, right? That's a truth, nothing to be apologized for. It's something to be, as Jesus says, be good stewards. We are to be good stewards of what we've been given, and we have been given great responsibility.
How about blessed are the peacemakers?
And blessed are the peacemakers. And did you see the movie Peacemaker with George Clooney way back? What was the peacemaker? It was a big bomb.
Yeah.
And that is the fact, right? Jesus said, I did not actually come to bring peace. Peace is the goal, but you've got to stir things up and expose the evil and root it out. That's the only way you're going to have peace, right?
Yeah.
And so,
and war sucks. Well, I know that we give war too low of a reputation, because war is also sometimes the only way that good happens when you're up against a dictator or a monster. In this case, Trump was angry at Zelensky. He didn't have the cards to win. The whole thing is funded by us and EU. Or they'd have gotten, like Trump said, they'd have gotten to Kyiv in 4 hours without our help. So hold on. Right. Let me get to Marjorie Taylor Greene here just on those stakes. I'm praying, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweet, I'm praying for tremendous success at the historic peace summit between President Trump and President Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. You know what? The Democrats are praying this thing fails. They don't want him to have a win. They'd rather have two countries killing each other's children. Ending this war is the right thing to do, not only for Ukraine and Russia, but for the entire world. Proudly, I never voted to fund this deadly massacre. America should have never sent hundreds of billions of U.S. taxpayer money to fuel the Ukraine-Russia war, as Ukraine is not even a member of NATO. And even worse, the sanctions imposed have had tremendous economic consequences. This is a real key for Trump. All over the world, causing rising costs that hit the poor the hardest around the world. So Trump could bring prices down around the world, not just in America. I applaud President Trump's efforts to end not only the Ukraine-Russian war, but wars around the world. The world's children deserve peace and prosperity for their future. Let's move on to this one here. Here's Caroline Levitt on the whole dealie.
Be so kind, and I'll just name some of those people, such as John Bolton, who I think has made a disgrace of himself on television and in the newspapers, claiming that he knows better than President Trump. No, he doesn't, and neither do any of these so-called foreign policy experts who have never solved a foreign policy conflict in their lives. Look at what this president has done in 6 months. He has stopped 7 global conflicts all around the world, using the leverage of the United States of America to negotiate these conflicts to an end. You had the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia at the White House last week, both of whom said this would not have been possible without the leadership of President Trump and his administration. So the American people trust this president. That's why they overwhelmingly reelected him. And I think it's pathetic, some of the chatter that we see from these so-called experts who have zero accomplishments on their own resumes to point to. President Trump knows what he's doing. He has great instincts. This is a highly complex and brutal war that, again, inherited by Joe Biden. Russia did not invade Ukraine under President Trump. They invaded under Joe Biden because of his incompetence and his weakness. And this president is trying to solve it and bring it to an end. And he deserves great credit for that.
For that, I just want to bring that to the fore. Remember, this whole thing started under Biden, and all the Democrats, and Bolton, who's a Republican in name only, are criticizing him, betting against it.
Without solutions. I listened to Bolton on CNN or whatever. I heard that bite of him going, welcoming this mass murderer Putin to the United States and all this spin, right? Welcoming him. Look, world leaders are in the sights of all other world leaders and terrorist organizations, blah, 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 right? They're going to do it when they can, where they can, in the safest place. And to question that, especially from a guy who has worked inside the administration, he's a paid shill, John Bolton. Good grief. Good grief. And going back, it's fun to watch and also unsettling to watch these talking heads that we know only from the screen and et cetera, that that turn out to be the wrong people and bad guys, and they were in the administration and trusted by Trump. And it's like, oh, the cesspool of DC is finally getting purged. Even Bill Barr.
Trump was so naive in the first administration. He surrounded himself by backstabbers without knowing it. He didn't realize the people on his side would be working against him, and he learned that lesson. 4 years he thought about it, and everyone was going like, oh, his administration, he's playing by the rules, he's coming in, he's going to be normal instead of being Trump. This time he's Trump.
Yeah, the wrecking ball.
The bull in the china shop, we say all the time. Okay, here's the next one. Well, I'm going to talk about a little bit of trouble about this meeting because Democrats and even this is footage I have of Russia's foreign minister Lavrov arrived to the peace talks with Trump wearing a CCP shirt, alluding to the time period during which Ukraine belonged to the Soviet Union. I'm not sure that's a good sign for peace talks. I don't know why a guy's wearing a T-shirt, but we'll see the shirt when he walks by. Let me get this up on the screen here. Watch this guy. Right there. You see that down in the corner?
Yeah.
Первый раз на Аляске. Лизейте, скажите, пожалуйста. Первый? Вам нравится?
What a dummy. Russian wearing a T-shirt to a meeting. Who do you think you are?
They were walking into a meeting.
That's them walking to the meeting.
Oh,
with
this
Trump.
morning or today. Oh,
yeah. I'm going to go into all of this. You're going to, by the way, audience, you can be completely caught up on all of the history by the time we're done. It'll just take a couple of minutes. Here's Condoleezza Rice, who I think has a lot of respect on the subject. I think she's really great on it and brilliant, of course, and a pretty sober mind. Let's watch her here.
Putin, in a sense, needs him more than he needs Putin. Yes, he needs Putin to stop this war, but he holds the options, which he's articulated, of putting more pressure on a Russian economy that is really in pretty dire straits when the Russians themselves, through their very fine central banker, start to talk about the dark problems that the Russian economy has. I think maybe people are trying to say, even Russians are trying to say to Vladimir Putin, we can't fight this war forever. Secondly, I think that you have the possibilities with the Russians to say to them, we are not going to do this over the heads of the Ukrainians because they have fought too hard. And that means that there's nothing wrong with having a discussion with Putin, but nothing can be a proposal that looks like an American-Russian proposal on how this war stops. The Europeans are going to be critical to whatever ceasefire eventually obtains. The Europeans are going to really be critical to making it work. Now, I'd be the first to say I think this war does need to stop, and it may have to stop with some inconclusive elements on how the territory will eventually look. I think Ukraine can be rebuilt. I think their defense industries are quite remarkable. They can continue to hold at risk things that the Russians care about, as they showed in what they did against the strategic bombing force. So let's not think of the Ukrainians as having no cards. They do have cards. And let's not think of the Russians as having all the cards. They don't have all the cards. And if you go in with that mentality, I think this will come out just fine.
She's wrong about that, by the way. The Ukrainians have no cards. All the cards they got were given to them by other people. Russia has its own cards. I'll let her continue.
And Putin, why do you think he agrees to this sit down? From a place of concern or from a place of trying to get his way in that room one-on-one?
Oh, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I do think he's concerned. And I think he just has a hard time accepting that he can't crush Ukraine, a country that he doesn't actually believe is a country. He told us it was a made-up country. But now with the threats against the Russian economy, with the shot across the bow about secondary sanctions, maybe it's starting to occur to him that he needs to stop this war. But he's certainly trying to deflect any action that the president might take. And so maybe he hopes that going into the room, he can once again use words to convince the president that he still wants peace. But I would just hope that the president remembers what he said very eloquently, that he got off the phone with Putin and they bombed Ukraine that night. That's the true Vladimir Putin.
Okay. So we're dealing with a madman.
Have you been to Russia?
No. I have a lot of Russian fans of my work out there, though. I've communicated with Russians a lot.
Okay. I've been there, but only to the airport, Moscow, had a layover. But I've been to 2 or 3 former Soviet bloc countries, right? So when it was the Soviet Union, Georgia and Armenia. And we look at world leaders doing their thing, and this is critical. Obviously, they're making very important decisions. But the people, when we look at history, there are movements that happen. And the thing that's the most exciting thing to me that's happening in all of this, in particular in Russia, is the resurgence of traditional faith, traditional values. The Russian people love Jesus, all right? It's like they were a Christian nation until the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. When I visited Tbilisi, Georgia, the capital of the city, it's right on the border of Russia, I went into a museum there and I was looking for World War I era information, and they only had back to 1917. They had eradicated their history prior. The Bolsheviks, the atheists,
right,
secularist atheists had eliminated the history, anything before 1917.
That's what communists do.
Right. So I was like, okay, it was eye-opening for me that these nations that are no longer part of the Soviet bloc still have that residual effect of that evil ideology.
There's a saying in Russia in the communist era where they said, in Russia, the future is certain. It's the past that keeps changing, because they go back and scrub their history so much.
In World War I, Russia was an ally against the Muslim Ottoman nation.
Oh,
right?
World War II, he wouldn't have beaten Germany without him.
Yeah. It was Christian versus Muslims on that front. It was literally Christian versus Muslim. It was, and it was.
Okay, we're going to go to the map. Only because I don't know anything about geography or anything. Over here this big blob is Ukraine. This is Russia all over here, and this is the area that Russia came and invaded. This red area here is the Donbass, and then down here is that Crimea, and so. This is the land that when Americans say, just give them the land and negotiate peace, this is what they mean. This is what, will Russia just take the land? And this land is what Zelensky will not give up. Picture if this chunk of America was taken by a hostile force, and you have another country like America coming in and negotiating peace and saying, just give them the land and the fighting will stop. And here's Kyiv up here, the star. This is where Russia has a lot. They have other fronts here and here. This is Ukraine pushing back also. They all want this peninsula, this water mass, all those beautiful mineral rights. There's all kinds of stuff here that they want. But there's a lot of military from Russia going all the way to Kyiv. And as you extend a war front, right? So as they point up toward Kyiv, you open up new lines of vulnerability. That entire supply chain, it goes halfway into the country, right? You don't want to create, you have a narrow front when it's flat. And as soon as you poke into another country, you're creating more surface area of exposed.
Thin red line.
Yeah. So that's just the strategy behind this thing. And when people say, when Condoleezza Rice is saying, I hope Trump remembers, you can't just give him the land. And there's a lot of isolationists like Marjorie Taylor Greene or whatever, that just go, look, I don't care about Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine, just give up the land and we want just peace. And you also have to go back to Putin, who has spent a lot of money on this war and human lives, right? I don't know what it is, 400,000. It's some outrageous amount of dead bodies of their youth that are gone. He has to show a win for it to all the oligarchs that run Russia, or he could be taken out of power. If he just says, I'll give you back the land, I'm sorry.
He's got pressure on him. And that pressure comes, one of the primary forces exerting that pressure. If you look at it, there's another map I've seen of Ukraine, of the, we have our red and blue maps where the ideologies are divided. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, let's bring that back up.
When you look at Ukraine, the eastern, all of that's colored red right there is, and even further in, that's on the eastern border of Ukraine.
Yeah, it touched Russia.
It's people that live there, the indigenous people, their native tongue is Russian.
They're Russian.
They are Russian. And so for them, this is a liberation from a takeover from 100 years ago, right? When Stalin drew the lines intentionally to divide. And that's the same thing that happened on the other side. This is the Black Sea at the bottom. If you go to the eastern border of the Black Sea, that's where Armenia and Georgia, these other Soviet bloc countries, same thing happened there. That's what's causing these disputes is Stalin drew these lines intentionally dividing naturally joined ethnic populations.
Yep.
So
some have said, Victor Davis Hanson has said that there's areas that Donbass and Crimea, they're often more Russian than Ukraine.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just, so they see it as a liberation. Let's go to, I don't want to spend too much time on this clown, but here's Geraldo. And I just kind of thought this was interesting because remember, he has fought Trump and he's just kind of warning that the Democrats are just against him for the sake of being against him.
Philosophy. And if your position is that the president is always wrong, sometimes you have to do real mental and physical gymnastics to say that you're on the side of the people who care about law and order. You just because it's Trump's idea doesn't make it bad. I think that I would love that to now be like, for instance, this Putin summit that's coming up. I would love for the Democrats to be cheering the president on rather than criticizing everything, almost by rote. If Trump says it, then the deranged, the syndrome says that it's bad. And I think that we need a lot more cooperation. There's plenty to criticize. For instance,
Okay, I'm gonna get past this criticism, but I just wanted to make that point that Democrats are rooting against the success of this mission. Now, here's Trump on Air Force One. This is audio only from Benny Johnson. Let me get this.
We get along. There's a good respect level on both sides, and I think something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia, and that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled. Are you going to talk about this?
We're not doing business until we get the war settled. Trump has the most powerful war weapon of all, America's economy that as a carrot. It doesn't have to all be stick.
It's the economy, stupid, right?
Let me hear if there's anything more in this clip.
We have the hottest country on earth. We have the hottest economy on earth. We have the hottest country. We just set a new stock market record again. We have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing in from tariffs. We're the hottest. We were a dead country, dead like doornails, a dead country. 1 year ago, we were dead as a doornail. And now we have the hottest country. And he wants a piece of that because his country is not hot economically. In fact, it's the opposite. And China's not doing well economically, but I want everybody to do well. The war's got to stop and the killing's got to stop.
What an amazing man.
Here's a word that Trump knows, and he knows how to use it. Leverage. Leverage. Big, beautiful word, leverage. He is leveraging the economy, the United States, to bring peace.
They only know how to treat it like a stick.
Yeah, right?
Democrats only know how to treat the economy even like a stick with sanctions. They just go, we're just going to cut you off. And Russia's still pumping out oil. It was going to India and going to China. So they're getting all their money from that. And their economy, as they were saying in an earlier clip, that the Russian people are suffering. Economically, they're destroyed. They're choked. And Trump's going to come in and offer a carrot. How about number one trading partner with America?
How about access to the American economy? Send your products here. Oh my gosh.
So the only question is, what happens with that landmass? They have to end the war.
It's a messy business, but every country has to deal with it, right? Borders, et cetera. But I wanted to interject this. Breaking news. Next week, Trump cures cancer. Democrats side with cancer.
That's right. Democrats side with cancer. Now, now you're from California, so you know Gavin Newsom, that jerk. This is the guy running against him. I don't know much about him. I've seen him on Fox News, this guy. Yeah. He's going to mention Gavin Newsom. I wanted to get your California flavor on this.
Very soon, President Trump is going to sit down with Vladimir Putin to try and end the war on Ukraine. Meanwhile, Gavin Newsom and the Democrats here in California are fighting a war on fossil fuels. And guess what? One of the main ways that President Trump is going to try and end the war and the death in Ukraine is by putting economic pressure on Putin, in particular, to stop countries buying Russian oil, countries like India especially. Well, guess what? Because of Gavin Newsom's war on fossil fuels, here in California, whereas we once used to produce most of the oil and gas we use here in our state, now we are importing most of it. Where does it come from? Countries including India and Turkey. Where does India and Turkey get their oil? Russia.
That is the craziest thing I've ever heard. We're paying for India fuel, for fuel from India to go to California, and India gets their fuel. They pay Russia, and Russia uses it to war, the money to war with Ukraine. And then we pay to defend Ukraine. We're paying for both sides of this war.
There are people lining their pockets all along the way as well. But this is how you turn California red. It's just how you do it. You double down when the rest of the world's going in a different direction. You dig your heels in because you want to be president. You go to central casting and you're like, yeah, I could be president, right? In central casting. And like, oh, we'll cast you. Absolutely. And you get it in your head and you believe that you can be president. You stand up to the big bad Donald Trump. Yeah. Your own state gravitated red in the last election. Like, 10 points. California.
The biggest reason not to vote for Gavin Newsom for president is what he did in California. He has the worst record.
Yeah.
And California Democrats, are they going to vote for him for president? All those leftists, they're in a cult. They're going to vote for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surrounded. Obviously, I'm embedded. Let's put it that way. I am embedded.
Yeah, you're in enemy territory. They're crazy.
Oh
let's look at this. This is General Mike Flynn. Not good the night before peace talks begin. Just dumb. What happened? One of Ukraine's largest drone attacks now hits Russia last night, the day before the peace accords.
Wow.
Or not an accord, but the peace things. Yeah. All these these are people checking flights. They can look at flights of around the world. These are all drones that Zelensky launched last night trying to undermine this peace negotiation.
It's the power of Donald Trump, right? He does something and everybody tries to counter it. He's an unstoppable force.
And remember, they're trying to get a peace deal today. Trump said in the first 2 minutes, they want a ceasefire. And now Putin's going to go back to his people and say they just rained the biggest drone strike yet on us last night. And now I have to go and shake this guy's hand and say, let's do peace. I'm not going to fire back on you. What a son of a bee. Zelensky undermining a peace deal. I'm telling you, what does John Bolton say to that?
Well, it's the money, right? They are beholden to corrupt mafia oligarchs that are forcing the narrative in a direction, and they just have to act. I guess they become true believers. Zelensky was a comedian, right? He was an entertainer. He was a comedian.
Yeah, another talk show host.
right. And
more of the talk show hosts.
So he gets into power, and now as a comedian / actor, he has to play a role, and they start believing. Right? I think they start believing, but they've sold their souls. Right.
And speaking of selling your soul, that's a good segue right here.
Well, let's hope. But he said he was going to end it one day. He hasn't done that. But again,
how happy she is that Trump hasn't ended the war.
And we want the people of Ukraine, and we commend them for fighting for democracy and fighting for their democracy. They're fighting for ours as well.
They're fighting for our democracy as well.
Oh my gosh,
dude! These Democrats.
They are fighting for democracy writ large. It's taken a long time. And he said he was going to do it in one day. It's been, 100, whatever, how many days. He hasn't done it yet. I'm disappointed that he has not continued the military assistance.
She's not angry. She's not disappointed that he hasn't ended it yet. She's making fun of him for that. She's disappointed that he hasn't given more military assistance to Ukraine to prolong the war.
Yeah, more death.
Because that has been a problem for the Ukrainians. But I wish him well on that. I don't trust Putin at all. I don't know what Putin has on the president that he's coming to Alaska. They shouldn't be going to Alaska. Russia claims Alaska. Russia claims Alaska. But nonetheless, it's happening. We hope it'll be successful. There's one thing more I want to say about this. I followed this. I was the first official of America to go to Ukraine after Russia invaded.
I don't care. When she said, I don't know what he has on him. I don't know what Putin has on Trump. Dude.
The most investigated man on the planet, right? The most investigated man. If they had anything, we'd all know it, right? We'd all know it.
End a war, and she's making a public statement undermining him. So is Gavin Newsom. These Democrats are so vested in Trump not getting peace, hoping he fails. And that was the Russia stuff. Again, I don't know what Putin has on him. You know what Putin has on is Hillary Clinton.
Uranium One.
Yeah, he has a ton of dirt on her. Wait, here's Simon Ateba. Now, this was another one. This guy's an alleged journalist. He says he's meeting with Putin without Zelensky. He's put himself in such a weak spot that Putin is almost the one calling the shots. This guy, Simon Ateba, used to be one of my favorite journalists.
Yeah. Is he the guy from South Africa?
The black guy, from South Africa. I don't get it. He flip-flops so many times. Wait, hold on. Last one. Here's Trump on Air Force One. Trump to the AF on Air Force One. Yes, there will be severe consequences for Russia if this meeting doesn't end well. Quote, I'm not doing this for my health, he added. And on that note,
so good.
You want to make a prediction?
Oh,
does he do it?
You mean end the war, ceasefire? I think he does.
I'm Doug in exile.
Serious question. What's the percent chance that the United States arrests Putin today? That's what I'm looking for. Dan, what's the percent chance they arrest him as a war criminal? Zero. Sean?
Zero.
Okay. When it happens, we'll post this moment. And I'll just say before we take your questions, we two-way tonight is on the 2028.
Wait, do you disagree? Yeah. Do you disagree?
Oh no, I think they're going to arrest him. I think that's the whole thing is to trick him to coming to the U.S. and going to arrest him. He's a war criminal.
That he is. But
so let's see. But we may do. My point is, we may do a special report. Just we'll see this weekend. That's one thing to look for is if we decide to do a special report because they've arrested Putin. All right, let's go to your questions now. As always,
that would be news,
please.